Good evening. Welcome to this candidates forum for Tarrytown Mayor and Trustee. My name is Susan Maggiato. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of the Rivertowns. We're pleased to be partnering tonight with Disability Rights New York to provide both American Sign Language interpretation and live closed captioning. To see the closed captions, you can click the 3 dots button on your bottom bar labeled More. Also, choose captions and show captions. This evening, you will have the opportunity to listen to the candidates' views on issues of importance to Tarrytown so that you can make an informed decision when you vote, either in early voting, which begins October 28th, or on Election Day, November 7th. The first part of the forum will feature the 2 candidates for mayor. It will last about 45 minutes. The balance of the forum will feature the 6 candidates for trustee that will begin around 7:45 p.m. Our timekeeper is Lynn Levine, a member of the Rivertowns League and a resident of Hastings. Our moderator is Maura Carlin, and in keeping with league policy, Ms. Carlin is not a voter in the district. She lives in Larchmont and is a member of the Larchmont-Mamaroneck League. A word about the League of Women Voters. I'm sure you know the League is a voter service organization, and indeed we are. That's been our mission since our founding in 1920 after women got the right to vote. But we are also an advocacy group. We lobby our legislators on public policy issues on the local, state, and national level. How do we arrive at our positions? By member study and consensus. Our positions represent the views of our members. So in that sense, we are political, but we are staunchly nonpartisan. That means as a league, we never support or oppose political candidates or parties. Membership in the league is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. A word about a recording policy that all the candidates have agreed to. Only the entities authorized by the league may record or live stream this forum. Only licensed media, which includes TV, radio, and newspapers, are entitled by FCC regulations to air portions of the recording. Anyone else who broadcasts or streams it must do so in its entirety. This is to ensure that the content of the forum will not be manipulated in any way to create false or misleading impressions of any candidate. The forum will be recorded and available for later viewing on our YouTube channel, LWV Rivertowns. You can also go to our Rivertowns League website and Facebook page for a link to the location. Finally, there will be no audience participation in the webinar. The questions the candidates will be answering were submitted by members of the community, either when they registered for the forum or by email to the league. A committee of league members met to review the questions. Our role was to organize them and in some cases combine questions on a similar subject to include as many as possible. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to the moderator, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you, Susan. It's my pleasure to be here. And as you heard, in accordance with league policy, I'm not a voter in this district. Before we begin, let's go over a few ground rules and the format for this evening. We're first going to hear from the 2 candidates for mayor and then proceed to the trustee candidate forum. The following apply to both forums. The forum will follow a traditional format, beginning with an opening statement from each candidate, followed by a question and response period, followed by closing statements. The order of opening statements and first question has been determined before the forum using a non-biased approach by the league. The order of closing statements will be in the reverse order as the opening statements. And the order in which the candidates will respond to further questions will be rotated. Each candidate has up to 1 minute for their opening and closing statements. And as you heard, the audience questions were collected in advance of the forum by the league. Questions had to include the name and address of the asker to ensure that the person was a resident of the municipality or district. But this information will remain confidential. And as you also heard, a committee of league members reviewed and sorted the questions. No questions will be taken from the audience. And candidates were not provided with any of the questions in advance. Each question will be addressed to each candidate, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. As I said, the order of the candidates responding will rotate. The question response times will be strictly enforced. A timekeeper will be visible on screen who will alert the moderator, me, and candidates when 30 seconds of response time are remaining and when to stop. A candidate will be allowed to finish a sentence once started, but not to start a new one. And each candidate will be allowed 2 rebuttals over the course of the event. Rebuttal time will be 30 seconds, and there will be no responses to rebuttals. During closing statements, the moderator may grant a rebuttal if deemed appropriate. Throughout the forum, no comments of a personal or abusive nature will be permitted. It will be ruled out of order. And the candidates will not interrupt one another or me during the forum. I will have the authority to pause the proceedings to enforce the ground rules and format. Except for time limits, the only restriction on candidate statements and answers is respect and civility. And with that, we're going to begin with the forum for the race for mayor. And there are 2 candidates in alphabetical order. Your candidates are Karen Brown, running on the Democratic line, and Douglas J. Zollo, running on the Republican and Village First lines. And we're going to begin with opening statements, and the order selected was that Mr. Zollo would start, and you each have 1 minute. Mr. Zollo, go ahead.
All right. My name is Doug Zollo. I'm a resident of Tarrytown for 40 years. My wife Lori and I raised our 2 children, Tom and Ann, in Tarrytown. And as a matter of fact, my son Tom still lives in Tarrytown, and my daughter Ann lives in New York City. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and for 8 years, I was a New York State Trooper. After I left the state police, I went into private business, and I own and operate 2 businesses out of Tarrytown. I've lived in Miller Park, the Crest. I built a house in Wilson Park and now live in the inner village. I was a member of the Board of Trustees for 18 years. I've run as an independent. I've run as a Democrat. I've run as a Republican. The first time I ran as an independent because the person who asked me to run the first time was a Democrat and said that if I ran with them, they expected I would vote for them. I might have been naive, but I wasn't stupid. I didn't think that I had to march to their orders. So
that is time.
That's time. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Brown?
Good evening. I'm Mayor Karen Brown. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and to everyone for tuning in and submitting questions. In 2021, the Board of Trustees and I set out to address the issues that are important to Tarrytown voters. We repaired sidewalks, beautified parks, installed safety measures on dangerous roads, and made upgrades to aging infrastructure. We're investing in public safety and economic development, and soon we'll have expanded parking and more affordable housing stock. We've cut red tape and created new options for homeowners, contained spending, and lowered the tax rate each year. The Board of Trustees is the most transparent ever, and inclusion and equity are at the heart of every decision we make. Tarrytown was just named Bronze Level Climate Smart Community, and Main Street was voted Best in Westchester by Westchester Magazine for 2 years running. Tonight, you'll hear more details about our accomplishments and strategies for the future, and I hope that you will trust me with your vote to continue moving Tarrytown forward. Thank you.
Okay, then we're ready to begin with questions. Mr. Zollo, you will get the first question first. What are the main issues facing Tarrytown, and what uniquely qualifies you to tackle them?
Well, I got involved when the ADU law was up for discussion. Ma'am, how long do I have to respond?
You have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay. When the ADUs was being discussed earlier in the year, it was apparent that the Board of Trustees was listening, but they weren't hearing what the residents who were most affected by it were saying. And in January, I asked for a building permit, and on the building permit, ADUs were listed, but the law had not passed yet. The law didn't pass until February. So that was a concern of mine, that there was no transparency in the government. Also, Con Ed, the administration decided that it was appropriate to change all ratepayers, electric ratepayers in Tarrytown from Con Ed to green energy. In September of this year, September, just a month ago, green energy costs twice as much as Con Ed, twice as much. And there are many, many, many residents that don't realize on the back of their Con Ed bill, in the top left-hand corner, it says, you are being supplied by Constellation Energy, which is green energy. Tarrytown also has $58 million in debt. So while taxes might be low, we keep raising the debt. Every year, the debt goes up. And we pay $5.5 million a year in debt service. So you can lower taxes. It's like saying you got your own house in order, but your credit cards are maxed out. It doesn't work that way. The sidewalks on Main Street are in horrible condition. The tree wells are in horrible condition. And there's garbage on the streets every day. And
that's time. I let you go finish your sentence. Ms. Brown, same question. Do you need me to read it?
Yes, please do.
What are the main issues facing Tarrytown and what uniquely qualifies you to tackle them?
Well, from my perspective, the most pressing issues right now are the rising costs of running a municipality. Tarrytown is in the center of a growing region. We have, everyone knows, the edge is in Sleepy Hollow. Regeneron to our east is building 1 million square feet of new office space, labs, parking. They're expecting 8,000 new new workers. Amazon is building a warehouse not far from us. So in the coming years, we're going to have to increase our services for non-tax paying people. So I think one of the most pressing issues is how are we going to pay for these new services that we have to provide? We can't continue to put it on the same 5,000 taxpayers. We have to figure out a way to smartly expand our tax base. I think that is one of our biggest issues because expanding our tax base means we have to work on smart development. I think that we have to be very careful about our spending and our borrowing. It's true, but our borrowing has gone to the things that we need to keep our village running. It has paid for village halls. It has paid for fire departments and many other things.
Okay, that's time. Thank you. On question 2, Ms. Brown, you start with this one, and it is, how would you overcome the difficulties of productively utilizing the Washington Irving Boat Club property?
We have been doing a lot of work looking at that area of the village. Back in about a year ago, we won a very competitive grant to take part in the Cornell Climate Adaptive Design Studio. And that was very helpful because it gave us some good plans on how to keep that area sustainable and what it might be used for. The boat club is part of the tapestry of our village. We want to keep it there. We are working with them now to give them a lease so that they can feel secure. And we can also have time to make plans about what to do with that space. The Scenic Hudson is working on a new river walk that's going to come into that area. And we are looking at how to better use our marina. So it's going to require a lot of study. We have started that, and I know that we'll come up with a plan that invigorates access to the river and adds to the economic development of Tarrytown.
Okay, Mr. Zollo, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
I don't believe it's necessary. No. If you review plans for the Riverwalk that comes from the south, down from the bridge, there are 3 areas where they may cross over the railroad tracks to connect to the Riverwalk in Tarrytown. In all 3 cases, the trail goes through the WY Boat Club, but nobody has talked about where it's going to go in the WY Boat Club. Does it parallel the tracks or does it go along the river? So while several years ago, we put out RFP for a request for proposals to what to do there, nobody said that part of the property would be used for the trail, but part of the property will be used for the trail. And the boat club, the members should be able to stay there. And then instead of kicking the can down the road and just keep renewing the lease and letting the restaurant stay there, there should be a portion of the land that is licensed to a restaurant, and it should be a family-friendly, moderately priced restaurant, and village should put out a proposal for that.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, Mr. Zollo, this goes to you first. What is your vision for the waterfront 20 or 30 years from now, especially considering climate change and sea level rise?
Well, first of all, there's one developer who is talking to the planning board and board of trustees about redeveloping 29 South Depot Plaza. That same developer developed Hudson Harbor, which he has not finished. Hudson Harbor is not done, and he also has the right to develop the Tarrytown Boat Club. Somebody should get him in a room and look at a holistic approach of what he wants to do, what he can do for the village and for himself, so that we have a full scope, the full picture of what could be done and what should be done on the waterfront. We don't know what's going to happen with American Paper. He might, maybe he could shed some light on it, which is the building to the south of 29 South Depot Plaza. He also has the rights to build, he wants to build a hotel at the Tarrytown Marina. And I'm not so sure that's a bad idea if it was something small and it didn't affect the view shed. But he has to put in the boat slips that were there at one time when it was a grand marina. And I think we could do the same there. And he has to finish the northern part of Hudson Harbor.
Ms. Brown, same question.
Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. What is your vision for the waterfront 20 or 30 years from now, especially considering climate change and sea level rise?
20 or 30 years from now, it's possible that a good portion of our waterfront will have been reclaimed by the Hudson River. And that's why we were so excited to be included in the Climate Adaptive Design Studio, because they gave us ideas on how to make sure anything we do from here forward is built in a sustainable way. It's given us some ideas that the planning board now has at its ready when talking about the 29 South Depot Plaza. I know that, yes, Hudson Harbor is not finished, and we have asked the developer, and I believe that he has, to first start by talking with the stakeholders down there, and that is the residents of Hudson Harbor, to talk to them about what would be acceptable to them, what they see as a good finish to that project. Once they finish having some kind of consensus there, then they can come to the planning board and we could work out a development there. I would like to see the marina in Tarrytown become more important again, but it's very difficult because there are problems with silt. We would need to do dredging, which is extraordinarily expensive, but actually because of the design studio, we're looking at something that's very interesting called banking of silt.
That's time, Ms. Brown. You get to start with the next question, which is question 4. Do you think that the percentage of affordable housing required of all developments is sufficient? And do you see opportunities to create more affordable housing in Tarrytown?
So our code requires that 10% of larger developments 10% of larger developments be put aside for affordable housing. Is it adequate? No, probably not. And we do have the Affordable Housing Committee working on how we might improve that by changing our code. Also, there are creative ways that developers can use money available from different levels of government to be compensated for more affordable housing. any project that comes to the planning board, that's one of the first questions we ask them. Can we get more affordable housing into this proposal? I also want to say that affordable housing, that's available to the lowest income is one thing, but what we need to do is to work towards the missing middle here in Tarrytown. We do have good affordable housing options. It's never enough, of course. The whole county, the whole country needs more. But we need to find options that are available for the workforce, for people who would not be considered in the economic strata that gets the subsidies and such. And those are the kinds of projects that we are trying to bring to the village.
Mr. Zollo, same question. Do you need me to read it to you?
No. 10% of the housing in Tarrytown is currently affordable housing. There's only one other community in Westchester that has more affordable housing per capita than Tarrytown, and that is Tuckahoe. So I think we've done more than our part in terms of supplying affordable housing. The code does stress that 10% of all projects now will have affordable housing. And with the addition of the YMCA, there'll be 90 more units of affordable housing. While it's touted as being senior housing, there's a criteria for affordable housing that has to be met, otherwise you can't move in. So I think that we've done our part and we continue to do our part.
Question 5, Mr. Zollo, you will begin. What kind of development should go on Broadway where vacant stores have stood for so many years?
Here's another instance where I believe you have to speak with the developers. Coco, that owns the abandoned or vacant Mrs. Greens and Boltons, came to us some years ago and wanted to put a 6-story building on that property. The code there calls for 3 stories. Somebody's got to get him to see what he can live with, him and Kaufman. Kaufman owns the Lyceum building. He owns the other buildings to the north of the CVS and Mrs. Green's. Get them together, get everybody together and decide what they can live with, what we can live with, so that we can build something along that corridor between Central Avenue and Dixon that's not offensive to the village, that would afford them income and revenue for the future. And I think if everybody just sits back and sits on their laurels and does nothing, nothing will ever get done.
Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you. Well, Doug, you'll be happy to know that somebody has done all that. One of the very first things I did when I became mayor, because the open retail on North Broadway is one of the top topics of concern. I called Ed Coco and I asked him to please come back to the table. He had been, he came with 2 proposals actually. One was 6 stories, really unacceptable. Then he came back with something that was quite scaled down, but there was some very aggressive no development elements around, and he took his plans and he left. And I called him and I asked him to please take another look, to please work with some developers who we know here in Tarrytown, who have we know to be responsive to the village, and see if you can come up with something. He has, from what I understand, been working with Bill Balter, who is doing the YMCA project. And Bill is great at building community consensus. And he has reached out to the neighbors there, to the stakeholders there. He's had conversations. I have not seen plans, but I believe there are some in the works. And I do hope that we'll be seeing them, because I agree with Doug. Something had to be done there. It is a drag on our economy.
Question 6. What are your ideal parking solutions for the village? And how do you feel about a garage or parking authority? Ms. Brown, you get to start.
I have to say, I'm not sure what is meant by a parking authority. I will say that over the years that both Doug and I were on the Board of Trustees, we did buy parking spaces and increase the parking in our village. We are, when the YMCA comes online, we're going to get another 60 underground spots, which is a new thing for Tarrytown. Every development that comes to town does have to have parking. We have pretty strict parking requirements for our new developments. And I think that parking will always be an issue on busy days. Also, one of the things that we're trying to do is to make a village that people don't always have to use their cars. We want to make the area more walkable. We want to, when we do build, try for transit-oriented development because people will have to use their cars less. We were accepted to another program called Project Mover that's going to have going to give us e-bikes, shared bikes. We're going to see how first it's in Ossining. We're watching how that works, and we're going to see if that works here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zollo?
Parking, since I've been in Tarrytown and since I was on the board 20 years ago, parking's always been a very, very difficult, question because you never have enough parking. We keep adding parking. We built the parking next to the South Washington lot. We built it on the west side of the road. We're adding the 66 spots at the YMCA. The McKeel lot doesn't get used enough because people don't want to walk. There's really very, very few solutions to the parking problems that we have. And I don't think e-bikes or bicycles are the answer. As it is now, bicycles ride on the sidewalks in Tarrytown because they can't ride on the roads. The roads are too tight and it's very dangerous for the pedestrians. And to have e-bikes on the sidewalks where they will be is a dangerous solution. I would not encourage it. People can't get, traffic can't get through Route 9 now. And if you put bicycles, they're not going to ride on Route 9. So they're going to end up riding on the sidewalks and they're going to hurt somebody very badly.
Question 7. What will you do to encourage greater pedestrian and bicycle safety on village streets, particularly Broadway? Mr. Zollo?
The answer is, well, first of all, I think we passed the law some years ago that you can only ride a bicycle. You can only have a bicycle on the east side of Broadway on the sidewalk. You couldn't do it on the west side. That's never enforced. And lately, there have been not only pedal bicycles on the sidewalk on the west side of Broadway, but lately we've had electric scooters and e-bikes. And to increase that is just going to increase the danger to pedestrians. Particularly going downhill past places like 19 South Broadway, where you've got senior citizens. People have to walk the bikes. They shouldn't even be allowed to ride them. And you can't ride on Broadway. That's impossible. They take the mirrors off the cars there now.
Ms. Brown?
That is a challenging subject. It's really true. And that is why the Board of Trustees of Tarrytown, along with Sleepy Hollow and the school district, have recently applied for a grant for a program called Safe Streets. And it will be a study of our streets to see how can we make them more walkable? How can we encourage bike riding where it won't be dangerous? Another thing that we're doing is, along with the other villages on the Rivertowns, we lobbied the state and were successful in getting the state to committing to a study of Route 9 to figure out how we can make it better and safer for cars, pedestrians, and cyclists. So we'll have really good traffic and road constructing minds looking at this issue. We are trying to encourage the building of sidewalks whenever there's a new development or an upgrade to an existing property. We're trying to encourage people to put sidewalks in so we can increase our network of sidewalks so people can feel more comfortable walking the streets in Tarrytown. So it needs creative minds looking at the issue. It is challenging.
Okay, thank you. Question 8. Tarrytown's government has a diversity program for its employees and volunteers. How do you think it's working? And are there any changes you would suggest? Ms. Brown?
Do you mean like a DEI training in that? A diversity program, is that what you mean?
That your government has a diversity program for its employees and volunteers. I assume that you know what that is.
Well,
Yeah, I
a
have
couple
no
of things. Okay, so
Sure.
I'm assuming you're talking about the implicit bias training that we had for our employees this year, along with the other river towns. Every river town participated in this training. It was implicit bias training, and I sat through it twice. And yes, I do think that it does give people strategies to talk to one another, to get past certain biases that we all have and don't even know that we do. The managers of these villages came to the mayors and told us that they wanted to have this training. So as a mayor of a village, when these professionals who run your staffs and your village halls tell you that this is something they believe that will make their offices work better, I would be inclined to support that. So I think that it was good training. If you want to know if it's really working, I would say ask the village administrators and the employees. I think people got a lot out of it.
Mr. Zollo?
I don't know a lot about it. I do remember it came up when I was on the board and I objected to it because they didn't think it was necessary. I don't remember one instance while I was on the board in 20 years where it was a racist situation. You know, it's like saying you create problems with sometimes when you do things like this. It's like critical race theory to me. Did you ever have a class on AEDs in any of the buildings to teach people how to, save a life? Did you ever have a class on CPR? Did you ever have a class on choking? But you're going to teach people how not to be racist. Sometimes you have to do practical things, not just which training, if you will.
Question 9.
Wait, excuse me. I would just like to use
So
one of
this is
my
a rebuttal, okay?
rebuttals on that.
Go ahead.
Implicit bias training is not all about being racist. It's about people have biases about one another. They don't understand certain cultures. No matter what color they are. It's about being able to communicate with one another and understanding where you might be causing an issue when you totally don't mean it. So it's about everybody of every color learning how to deal with one another. It really is a lot about communications, and
I
communications are
believe that's
very
time. There were
sensitive.
30 seconds for a rebuttal. Okay, question 9.
Did I say something about that?
You want to use a rebuttal? Go right ahead. It's 30 seconds.
I will put on my Facebook page a resolution that was going to be passed in 2018 about Tarrytown having a hate group committee because of all the hate group crimes that were taking place. I called up the police chief and said, "What are they talking about? Hate? Did we ever have a hate group, a hate crime in Tarrytown?" He said, "No, I don't know what they're talking about." And I wouldn't let them pass the resolution. This reminds me of the same thing. I don't remember one racist or biased incident in Tarrytown in my 18 years on the board, but we spent $7,000 because I'm going back now, there was going to be $7,000 to teach people how not to be racist when we can't teach the people in the rec center how to save a life if somebody passes out.
Okay, that's time. And as a reminder, you each have one rebuttal left.
Thank you.
Question 9. The disability community is said to be the largest minority community in the world. What would you do to advocate making municipal services, workplaces, and businesses more accessible for people with disabilities, particularly or including those who are deaf, hard of hearing, or visually impaired. And Mr. Zollo, you begin for this one.
I own two businesses in Tarrytown, and one of them is a property management firm. And the building department is very good about going out and making sure that all of the buildings have hearing impaired and sight impaired devices. So if an emergency occurs, the devices will alert those people that the emergency is in place. I would also tell the developer down on the waterfront that as an incentive for building, I would like him to open up the tunnel that goes under the train tracks so that people with disabilities and people who cannot navigate the H Bridge can go underneath the railroad tracks. There was a tunnel there, and in 2017, we did a study, and engineers said that it could be opened again at a cost of about $1 million, and we could put ADA compliant ramps going north and south on both sides while the tunnel goes east and west underneath the railroad tracks. That would connect the north, the east and the west side of Main Street and make our waterfront accessible to everybody in the village.
Ms. Brown, same question.
Accessibility is a larger question, I think, than just ramps and you know, sidewalks with curbs. It is about being able to participate in events. It's about being able to come to meetings. It's about being included in plans for development. So I think that, you know, now hearing this as a question and knowing that it's important to people, we should look into having more representation from that community to help us to always look at their issues when we're planning virtually anything. That tunnel underneath going under the train tracks is problematic, extraordinarily steep, and floods would probably be a problem for anybody. So I don't know that is the answer. We have some wonderful organizations in Tarrytown that help people with disabilities. In Sleepy Hollow, you know, we have Sleepy Hollow 2 Cafe. We just heard from the IAHD, which is a day program for people with developmental disabilities. And we could do a
Okay, thank you. Question 10. Tarrytown is in the forefront of the effort to lower its carbon footprint. What more can be done? And we'll start with you, Ms. Brown.
Tarrytown was just recently named a bronze level climate smart community. And we accomplished that by taking steps to lower our carbon. Easy steps that not only lowered our carbon footprint, but saved the village a ton of money. That was changing the light bulbs in village buildings. We are currently now, the next step is to do, we've done an inventory of the carbon output of our village buildings. And we know now which ones are the biggest culprits, and we're looking at ways to change that. Always looking for grants, to do it with grants. There's a lot of money out there to lower your carbon footprint. So we've already taken a tremendous amount of steps towards that goal. And our Environmental Action Committee is very, very active in that area. We are planting a lot of pollinator gardens and trees to, increase our CO2 eating abilities, and we've taken a lot of steps towards food scrapping, all sorts of things that could save energy and help us be more sustainable.
Mr. Zollo, same question.
I think probably the biggest violator of is the traffic that we have on our roads, probably Route 9. And we should find ways to move the traffic through the village faster, more efficiently, so that trucks and cars are not idling on Route 9. And also any trucks that are making deliveries in the commercial areas should not be allowed to idle. And buses down around Walgreens should not be allowed to idle. And that would probably do more for the environment of Tarrytown than anything else, including pollinator gardens or anything else.
Okay, that is all the questions that we have time for this evening. So we are now going to go to the closing statements, and you will each have 1 minute. As I said earlier, the closing statements will be given in the reverse order as opening statements. So we will begin with you, Ms. Brown.
So tonight we discussed the issues that are important to Tarrytown voters. We've talked about sustainability, we've talked about affordable housing, we've talked a little bit about infrastructure and accessibility. Becky McGovern, Effie Phillips-Staley, David Kim and I, along with trustees Paul Rinaldi, Bobby Hoyt, and Thomas Mitchell, will continue to address these issues by learning, listening to residents, and collaborating with experts. This village is really fortunate to have engaged smart citizens ready to step in with their expertise, and a village hall led by talented and dedicated staff. We'll continue to upgrade our infrastructure, parks, roads, and services. We're committed to public safety, economic development, and more attainable housing options. We'll continue to cut red tape, be financially responsible, and improve communications between residents and Village Hall. We'll honor the progressive spirit and the traditions of this great village with efficacy, resilience, and optimism.
Okay, that's time. Mr. Zollo.
A couple of things. First of all, I would reverse the ADU law. Secondly, I would work to cancel the contract for green energy so that those that don't know that they're paying twice as much as they have to for electricity will not be paying twice as much. The $58 million in debt is very concerning. I would try to get that down. I had a conversation with Mayor Martin. I don't know how you say his last name, so I'm not even going to try to say it, from Sleepy Hollow. We talked about shared services, and he very much agreed that a lot of equipment, let's say at the DPW, could be shared to save everybody money. I would also try to repair the damage done to the relationship between first responders and Village Hall. The fire department in particular feels like they're not given the respect that they're due, and the police department's morale in relation to the Village Hall is probably at an all-time low.
Okay, thank you. And we'd like to thank both of you candidates for participating in this forum. We thank you very much. This is now the conclusion of the mayoral forum. In a few minutes, we will begin the forum for trustee candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask that the candidates for trustee please come back on screen so we can get started with your forum. One, two. Okay, I think you're all here now. Great. So why don't we get started? This is a forum for the candidates for trustee of the Village of Tarrytown. We have 6 candidates and 3 open seats. I'm going to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. We have Peter R. Bartolacci, running on the Republican and Village First Lines. John J. Callanan, running on the Republican and Village First Lines. David Kim on the Democratic line. Haydee L. McCarthy on the Republican and Village First Lines. Rebecca McGovern on the Democratic line. Effie G. Phillips-Staley on the Democratic line. The order of the opening statements and first questions was determined earlier, so we're going to start that way and in that order. Mr. Callanan, you are first.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of the Rivertowns. My wife and I moved to Tarrytown in 2002, and we've loved the village that we've lived in and raised our children in for so many years. And in recent years, I've become increasingly concerned about the direction and sort of the trajectory that the village is headed. I noticed back in December of this past year, a sign on a front yard that said no ADUs in Tarrytown. And I wasn't aware of what an ADU was. So I looked it up and I thought, you got to be kidding me. There were proposals to build ADUs in Tarrytown. So myself, two of our daughters and myself took it upon ourselves to put a letter together to the residents in our neighborhood and just went around kind of passing them out. And there were about 200 letters all total. And what I realized from that was nobody knew about the ADU law that the village was proposing. So based on the outcry and that came of that, I realized we had a problem in town. I'm concerned about
Mr.
the lack of
Callanan,
open-
that is time, and I'm going to remind everyone, everyone has 1 minute for both their
Oh, yeah.
opening and closing statements. You will get a warning at 30 seconds, and then there'll be a stop. You will be able to finish a sentence, but not start a new one. So now, next is Ms. McCarthy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Haydee McCarthy. I'm a lifelong resident of Sleepy Hollow, of Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow area, born and raised in Tarrytown, as well as my husband. We have 2 small children and are just feeling always very privileged to live in a town as beautiful as Tarrytown. But as my running mate, John said, part of the reason that I have become involved and wanting to have potentially the honor of representing all of you is because as a result of the ADUs, I just felt that there was an issue with transparency, an issue with accountability from our village leadership. And I would like to be able to have the opportunity to be a representative to my fellow residents and be a voice so that everyone, whether you were in favor of ADUs or not, or any other issue, feels like they have a representative that's able to represent them and allow them to have an opportunity to speak.
Okay,
So
that's
thank you.
time. Ms. McGovern, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name's Becky McGovern, and I'm seeking re-election to the Tarrytown Board of Trustees. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. First, let me start off by saying it's been an honor and a privilege to have served as Tarrytown Village Trustee for the past 14 years and Deputy Mayor during the past 2 years. I'd very much like to continue my service, and I'm asking the people of Tarrytown to give me 2 more years. I spent the last 16 years working as village liaison to many groups, including Parks and Rec, our incredible senior citizens, the Tarrytown Municipal Housing Authority, the Affordable Housing Task Force, Library Budget Board. My work with these various groups has given me an in-depth exposure to the understanding of the village code, numerous village policies, and the overall budgetary process, all of which has helped me serve the village. As a member of the Board of Trustees and Deputy Mayor, I will continue to be focused on our Parks and Recs, upcoming village development concerns, and work on bringing more affordable housing into our village. Of course, there's more work to do and projects to finish. There will be continued work on the waterfront development and continuation of the Riverwalk. There will be continued work and oversight on the revitalization.
I'm sorry, that's time.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Ms. Phillips-Staley. We can't hear you. Please turn on your mic.
I have to do that once a debate. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate. My name is Effie Phillips-Staley, and I'm proud to be running for re-election as village trustee on the Democratic ticket led by Mayor Karen Brown. 2 years ago, I was persuaded to run for office when my husband and 2 kids really thought I should. They love Tarrytown as much as I do. But I also ran because I'm driven by a core value set that fundamentally seeks to do the most good for as many people as possible. So what does that mean in terms of my 2 years as a trustee and for why I'm seeking re-election today? It means making sure that Tarrytown stays safe, walkable, and livable for all who call our village home. It means upgrading our aging infrastructure to protect ourselves and our properties from extreme weather. It means empowering inclusive participation in government through ample, accessible communications. And it means building community by coming together, celebrating who we are, and honoring those who serve us. So I look forward to taking questions tonight on how Democrats will continue to move Tarrytown forward, and we hope to earn your vote.
Okay, that's time. Mr. Kim.
I'm sorry. Good evening. My name is David Kim, and I'm running for my second term as village trustee. I seek another term on the board to continue to apply my experience and perspective as a trained architect and urban planner in charting a resilient and sustainable future for you, the current village residents, and those who are yet to come. Like many of you, my wife and I are parents to 2 school-aged children and live in the Miller Park neighborhood with my aging parents. Traffic safety concerns matter a great deal to me, as does efficient mobility. I have continued to focus on substantive improvements, short and long term, with my work with the Transportation Mobility Council and the Route 9 Active Transportation Study. In addition, I'm also a member of the Westchester County Transportation Board focused on issues of regional mobility. I want to keep working to make getting around our village safe, convenient, and enjoyable for the youngest to the oldest, whether it is by walking, biking, or driving. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bartolacci.
Hi, my name is Peter Bartolacci. I am running for trustee. I've lived in Tarrytown for 20 years with my wife, and we welcomed twins back in 2009, and they're now 14. They're growing up in Tarrytown and going to public schools. I just want to touch on something I heard at the beginning here. Susan said, our positions match the views of our members. And she was referring to how the League of Women Voters comes to their position on advocacy. And that really struck me because I think there's a problem in Tarrytown right now. I don't think the Board of Trustees listens to their residents. They've already formulated their positions. And if you happen to agree with their positions, that's great. But if you don't, they're not really interested in hearing it. And that is a problem. They are supposed to be representative of their residents, and they are representatives of the residents that agree with them, but not those that have a different view. And that needs to change.
Time. Okay, we are going to begin with our questioning. It will be start in the same order as the opening statements, and then we will begin a rotation. So, question 1. What are the main issues facing Tarrytown, and what uniquely qualifies you to tackle them? And that would go to you, Mr. Callanan, to start.
Great, thanks. I think one of the biggest issues in speaking with so many residents has been just the not just the current population density, but the proposed population density, and this concern that we're headed down a path where Mr. Kim mentioned he's an urban planner. We're not an urban community. We're a healthy suburban community with much lower population density. What allows me to claim qualification is I've taught public policy for a major university for over 20 years. And what we do in class each day with the students is essentially we look at societal problems and we try to come up with solutions for them. So I've got a history of helping students solve societal problems at the local level, as well as setting on that myself as well. Beyond that, I'm willing to listen to the people of the village, the residents, and I'm willing to pound the pavement to get to them to find out what their concerns are. Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder, you all have 1.5 minutes for answering questions. Ms. McCarthy, you're next for the same question. Do you need me to read it again?
If you could, please.
Okay. What are the main issues facing Tarrytown, and what uniquely qualifies you to tackle them?
Well, I think that the main issues are not just affordability, but a density issue as well. A need to push for development that I don't think is done in a way that is respectful of the integrity and the charm of the village, and also in a way that actually listens to its residents. The last time that there was not only just ADUs, but previously in the past with other projects, there has been a lot of uproar and a lot of complaints from residents that really has been what has quelled or caused for there to be a halt or for there to be a revisit to what plans are initially being proposed. And I think that what takes place is that there's a lot of, there's not a lot of forward thinking, there's a lot of hindsight afterwards. I believe that I'm uniquely in a unique position, both as someone that's born and raised in the town, and I have a lot of pride and love for this village. Not that anyone else that moves in at any other time doesn't, but I have seen the village change as I have gotten older in life and as time has gone on. I'm a parent, so I think from the perspective of what I'd like for my children and future generations to be able to enjoy as well. And also by profession, I'm an interior designer. And so I also think that using my skill set on a professional level will allow me to be a unique candidate to allow for there to be some architectural and historical integrity in whatever
That's
projects
time.
move forward. Thank you.
Ms. McGovern.
Could you repeat the question one more time for me, please?
Sure. What are the main issues facing Tarrytown and what uniquely qualifies you to tackle them?
Well, that's good. Main issues are responsible development. Being able to look at the whole of Tarrytown as a, you know, as a responsible person in Tarrytown, I feel obligated to pay attention to every little aspect, and that includes our senior citizens, our fire department, our police department. I think that the biggest challenge for Tarrytown right now is to be able to be a community that helps each other, that is responsible to each other, that listens to each other. And as far as I'm concerned, my biggest strength is always to be a listener, to be incredibly involved in my community at every level, with seniors, with in the recreation department. I fully believe that you have to be in there to hear what people are saying. I do that. I believe in community service. I've been in Tarrytown for over 40 years. I've raised my family here, so I too have a very historical perspective, and I have a lot of history that I can share, as well as responsible ideas for the future. I do think Tarrytown is our board is very responsive to what's going on in Tarrytown, and I know that we will continue to do so. So thank you.
Okay. Ms. Phillips-Staley.
Thank you for the question. What I thought at first when you asked it is something that I actually hear from my children in schools. They both attend the public schools, and it's the number of their friends who end up leaving town because their families can no longer afford to live here. It's because their rents are too high. It's because there isn't enough housing. And it's really tragic, you know, to have your kids come home and say something like that to you. The kids that they eat lunch with at school have to leave. I think there's been an immense amount of turnover in Tarrytown because of affordability. And not only that, I think also the number of food pantries that have been opening up as well are an indicator that not only are we struggling with high prices within the village, but it is impacting people in ways that impacts their homes. And I think and their health, you know, when food insecurity is a problem. I think what makes me qualified to do that is I've spent the last 30 years working in the nonprofit sector, focusing on issues like social justice, focusing on issues like food insecurity, access to education and equity. And this is something I pay attention to a lot. I even heard it walking my dog down Storm Street the other day, a family speaking about how they weren't making enough to pay their rent. I think responsible development is the way to alleviate that, because if we don't do it, people who have lived in Tarrytown for the bulk of their lives are going to have to leave, and I don't think that's right.
Okay, that's time. Mr. Kim, same question.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm an architect and an urban planner. And the urban planner, does that mean we're only looking at big, dense cities? It's really about planning human habitat. There's the natural world, and then there's the places where people live. And so, where places people live can range from big cities like New York to small towns even smaller than Tarrytown. I just wanted to make that clear. And as Effie had mentioned, it is really about affordability. My family moved here in 2016. We were fortunate, even, it hasn't been that long, but we were able to afford something because it had 2 units in it. And one of them, the reason for it was that we could either rent it out or we could have a family member who lived in the other unit to pool the resources and help each other. So really, affordability in our village goes to all the people that are not seen. Usually, the ones that the college student or the person who just graduated who cannot afford to live here, or the aging senior who's on a sorry.
That's time. Mr. Bartolacci.
I would say the issues facing Tarrytown, certainly development / density, affordability is an issue, traffic congestion. But I think the biggest issue is the non-representative board that I mentioned in my opening statement. In terms of development, it needs to be responsible. It needs to be holistic. We need to look at the stock, what's available, and how could we transform Tarrytown in a responsible way so that we're not adding to this traffic congestion that I mentioned that's a big problem. What can we do that will maybe not add 100% new cars, but might be incremental cars? For example, repurposing office buildings. This board rejected a proposal to repurpose an office building on South Broadway, which I actually thought was a really good idea. But for whatever reason, that went nowhere with this board. I'm not sure what you can do about congestion. I really don't know what you can do about congestion other than not making it worse. I mean, the reality right now is that Broadway is a mess. And how can we just make sure we don't make it worse? And in terms of qualifications, I just have a lot of common sense. And I like to look at things and investigate things from all angles. And I think that would qualify me as a board member.
Okay. The next question, what do you value most about Tarrytown? And what do you see as the greatest opportunities for the village? And on this question, we're going to start with Ms. McCarthy.
What do I appreciate and love the most about Tarrytown and value most is the uniqueness of its residents. My grandparents came here from Cuba in the 60s. There was a large Cuban community in Tarrytown and in Sleepy Hollow. And my grandparents, my father, there's a large majority of people that come from different walks of life, that whether they be immigrants, Spanish-speaking individuals, whether they live in affordable housing with a capital A or lowercase a, whether they live in Wilson Park. And it's a unique place to live that has a really beautiful tapestry of many different individuals that all come together in a very, very nice way. I grew up with a lot of friends from all different walks of life. What I think is unique in regards to speaking about affordability, I think that we can find opportunities to make Tarrytown even more special by making things easier for the residents that are here, providing them maybe with more programs for after school, providing programs using the rec department in a way where it provides sports for children. Wolfpack, TNT, those are big sports set programs that were very instrumental in a lot of my upbringing and many other residents' upbringing. And I'd like to see more of that as a resurgence.
Ms. McGovern, same question.
Okay, just again, repeat the question for me.
Sure, I can repeat the question.
Thank you.
What do you value most about Tarrytown, and what do you see as the greatest opportunities for the village?
Okay, Well, what I value most about Tarrytown is something that's kind of everybody I know is going to say, and that would be our diversity and the incredibly different walks of life that people come from, different countries, I mean, it's amazing. And the most amazing part is how there's something in Tarrytown that works, and it's the community part. It's the part where when one person hears something or hears of a need, everybody acts on it. When somebody becomes aware of a situation, it becomes so prevalent and people immediately run it and help. And it's just this whole attitude of the willingness to listen to each other, non-judgmental. That's what I value the most is the people. I can't put it any other way. And it's the people that make Tarrytown, not the board of, not us, not the mayor, it's the people. And we, as a board, have been very, very responsive to the people in Tarrytown. And I thank you. And I feel strongly that we've listened. We have adapted so many different things to after listening to people, we've changed things. I mean, we're responsive. And what I value the most, just can't say it any other way. It's the people. They're perfect.
Ms. Phillips-Staley?
Hi, when I first moved to Tarrytown with my family, we spent a lot of time looking for a place to live and feel so lucky that we ended up here. I feel that Tarrytown is in many ways sort of the quintessential American town. It has an extraordinary main street. It has a beautiful green spaces, incredible riverfront. I will say thanks in large part to the Democratic leadership that made those things happen. It has the kind of diversity that Becky has mentioned, which is how I grew up. I grew up exactly with that kind of income and racial diversity that is so specific and wonderful about American cities and American towns. I think the opportunities that exist are enjoying making our village as accessible as possible for people to enjoy the kinds of public spaces that we have that were sort of built for that purpose. I think the kinds of Open Streets Tarrytown has been a great example of that. It's been a way for everybody to come together, to celebrate who we are, to enjoy our beautiful Main Street. And I will also say this, a big part of why I came here and I live in the inner village, is specifically the walkability. Like how wonderful that my children walk to school, how wonderful that we can all enjoy the space together. Thanks.
Mr. Kim.
Thank you. I want to answer that one question that Mr. Bartolacci alluded to, and I agree that with the 303 development or the proposal, yeah, it is a good proposal but I think what we did was, it's not like we did not disregard it offhand, but we said we needed to wait in order to be able to look at the whole of the corridor, because as you mentioned, that the traffic is pretty bad in that area. Now, the things that we looked at in terms of coming to Tarrytown is that, one is its beauty, its geography, its diversity, and it's at a crossroads. It has many, it's got the thruway, the trains, Route 9, that is at a crossroads. We're at a transportation hub, and that's what makes Tarrytown. Those are some of the qualities that makes Tarrytown so wonderful. But as we lived here in Tarrytown, I think what we appreciated most is the intimacy that we have with the rest of the members, the people who live here, getting to know people, knowing their kids, being accepted by many people. Just, didn't matter where you came from. And so that was what was great about, I think, Tarrytown. And I think that is its greatest asset as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bartolacci.
So for me, what makes Tarrytown special is its natural beauty. The river views are spectacular from so many places, coming down Nepperhan or Benedict Avenue, sorry, on a fall evening with the sun setting. It's just stunning. And it makes me so happy to live here. And we need to just make sure that we keep it that way by not overdeveloping, by not putting tall buildings down near the river, which was an idea that was floated by the current board not so many years ago. In terms of opportunities, I think there are many, particularly around making it more beautiful. For example, the Tarrytown Lakes Road. I drive along that road very frequently, taking my son to the hockey rink. And it dawned on me the other day that it's very hard to see the actual lakes because there's so much foliage. The trees have just become overgrown along the road that you don't even get a view of the lake. That was a scenic highway. It was designed to have the view from the road, and you don't have that view anymore in a lot of spots. So that's an opportunity to me to make Tarrytown even more beautiful than it is now.
Okay, we'll move to question 3. How would you overcome the difficulties of productively utilizing the Washington Irving Boat Club property?
Ma'am, I haven't ordered yet. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I didn't get a chance to answer the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry,
That's
Mr.
okay.
Brown. I'm glad you
We can
spoke
skip
up.
if need be.
I did skip
No
over you.
problem.
I apologize.
That's okay. No problem.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Your turn.
As a historian by trade, I love the history of Tarrytown and really the whole Hudson Valley region. It's remarkable in so many ways. And as a commuter and as a person from a big family, as David mentioned, the location is great. I mean, you have access to New York City right there, and again, the Hudson Valley, the tri-state area as well. As an outdoorsman, we have some of the best fishing in the world right down the hill. And I don't know how many people realize that. So it's remarkable in so many ways. I think the diversity is wonderful. The opportunities here are incredible. As a parent, as a husband, we've always loved the safe streets of Tarrytown and the quiet neighborhoods, and just people stroll downtown. People have mentioned walkability. That's great. We live on a mountain, so it's really hard to walk the town. But my concern is that the safe streets that we're trying to hold on to, the quiet neighborhoods, the pristine rustic downtown is under assault. Some of the programs, some of the policies that the current board and the current mayor are proposing. Thank you.
Again, I apologize. As you might imagine,
No,
with
no
6 candidates, the rotation, keeping track, a little difficult. Okay, we're going to go to the 3rd question, which is, how would you overcome the difficulties of productively utilizing the Washington Irving Boat Club property? And we will begin with Ms. McGovern.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. Oh, so we're talking about the WI Boat Club. Okay, that property in Tarrytown is owned by the Village of Tarrytown. The WI Boat Club has been an institution down there for as long as I've been here. It is a wonderful place. So our goal in paying attention to this property is not to kick them out or to change things. Our goal is to work at making it the best place for all people in Tarrytown to be able to use. Now, one of the issues that's going to come up, as was mentioned, would be the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk is something that's coming through. To the best of my knowledge, right now, they're leaning towards the Riverwalk paralleling the railroad tracks, which would not interfere with where the present WI Boat Club is. Whether or not we change what's down there is going to require us to really consider what the collaborative studio has told us about water level that's going to come up in that area. So we have to be responsible not only to the village, but to the people who are working and living down there and make a living. It's going to change down there. But for now, for the moment, it's a wonderful place and we're going to keep it. We're going to renew the lease. We're going to work with them and helping them to stay there for as long as it's viable. So thank you.
Okay, Ms. Phillips-Staley.
echoing Becky's comments, it's a real challenge with climate change, with extreme weather, to design by the river, knowing that we will see increased water levels. I think the Cornell Climate Adaptive Studio said something in the order of, within the next 50 to 100 years of 8 feet. So the kinds of investments we make now, exactly as Becky said, have to really preserve this wonderful institution that's been in Tarrytown for quite a long time. And it's a space that I love visiting. That's why we're renewing the lease, and we have a new restaurant that is coming in. But also thinking long-term about how that space needs to be developed so that whatever we do, whatever we really invest in, can last well into the future. The kind of planning we're doing now has to straddle the economic needs of the moment, but also the long-term viability of the space, knowing that water levels will rise.
Same question, Mr. Kim.
Thank you. As it's been mentioned, we did go through the Climate Adaptive Design Studio. That was a collaboration between the Cornell's landscape architecture program and the Department of Environmental Conservation at the state. And right now we're waiting for. Let me talk a little bit about actually the restaurant. And I've had the privilege. I haven't been there all that often, but it is a beautiful spot, and the only thing that I wish it was more accessible to people who are not patrons of the restaurant, but it's accessible to the public. I think the restaurant, it's a great amenity for that spot for the time being, and I think as well as the boat club. And I hope that it can stay as long as possible. But at the same time, I think, as we mentioned, there will be another next phase of this, the Climate Adaptive Design Studio, hopefully, within the next 6 months, where there will be a more look at the design of the waterfront in that area to figure out how it can best work for not only now, but all into the future.
Mr. Bartolacci, you're next. I'm just going to read the question one more time. How would you overcome the difficulties of productively utilizing the Washington Irving Boat Club properly? As I said, Mr. Bartolacci, it's your turn.
I'll just say that I am a boater, so I fully support having marinas in Tarrytown. It's a wonderful way to spend some time, and I encourage everyone to get out on the water whenever they can. It soothes the soul. In terms of the Washington Irving situation, it's been a year-to-year lease, I think, for I don't know how long. I think it's just time to make some decisions and figure out what's going to happen. Certainly, as a trustee, I would advocate for keeping the marina. It's kind of known as not in a bad sense, but it's a working man's marina. It's not a ritzy, fancy marina where people wear their blue blazers and captain hats. It's a working man's marina. It's an everyman marina, and I think that fits very nicely with the character of Tarrytown, because that's kind of the way Tarrytown is in a lot of ways. So in terms of how do we work productively, I think decisions need to be made, and we need to move forward instead of kicking the can down the road, which has been happening for quite a while now.
Mr. Callanan, same question.
Sure, thanks, Maura. I think the boat club is amazing. I wouldn't really do anything with it in terms of developing it. Ms. Phillips-Staley had said, needs to be developed. I respectfully disagree. I think it's a gem. It's very much a part of the fabric of our village and the community. And it's a great thing to be able to go down there during the summer. The diversity of the clientele, the accessibility is fantastic. Aside from concerns about the river level rising, which is probably more of a question for engineers and folks, from that walk of life, in a sense, I wouldn't touch it. One of my concerns is with the talk of the Riverwalk and the better use of the marina. The question is, well, who are we looking to serve by doing that? Is it for Tarrytown residents, or is it for people that are from out of town? Not to discourage people from out of town from coming to Tarrytown, but I think the priority really should be on the residents of Tarrytown. In this case, as in a lot of the cases, and I just think that the river, like I said, the WI Boat Club is a jam that I would leave as much as possible the way it is. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy, same question.
I'm gonna echo what my running mate John said. I would leave the marina as much of it as possible as it is. It's part of the tapestry of town. Nowhere else can you go and sit with friends or family and have like a few pitchers of beer or listen to some music. And the restaurant and the boat club itself were two separate entities until very recently. So you did not have to be a patron of the restaurant. I would focus on making sure that obviously the environmental aspect is reviewed by the Corps of Engineers. I know that there had been some concerns from residents and meetings that I had attended from the fire department that had requested more information as to why dredging did not take place in certain areas of the marina that had been requested, and that the village was going to get back to them with responses to that. And I don't know whatever transpired, because every meeting they would say, well, we'll get back to you on that, and never actually answered the question in regards to dredging that could potentially have helped or can help mitigate any environmental impact and concern. And in regards to the boat club itself, I would try to not issue RFPs and not issue, one-year leases to see if someone will come along the line and make this different and reinvent the wheel. There's some certain things in town that just do not need to be changed, and more resident participation should be involved in those types of decisions as well.
That is time.
I'm sorry, just a quick rebuttal.
Who is that speaking? I can't. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
I just want to clarify my statement because I think John and Haydee will be happy to hear it. In the last working session, we were discussing the multi-year lease because we do actually think a multi-year lease is very important for the space. And I think it's critical not to change it. I agree with you entirely. Any kind of change to the boat club, to the restaurant, to the space, particularly made quickly in advance of looking at the impact of climate change on the space is not what we're suggesting.
Okay, that is time, and that is one of your two rebuttals. We're going to go to the next question, question 4. What is your vision for the waterfront 20 or 30 years from now, especially considering climate change and sea level rise? And this question goes to you, Ms. Phillips-Staley, first.
Thank you. This is actually something we have been thinking about a lot because I think it will be the duty of the leadership of this village now and into the immediate future to really make the kinds of decisions that will enable the space to benefit for the next 100 years, right? And it takes an immense amount of research. And as others have said, quite a lot of expertise, which is why we went into partnership with Cornell University to begin to study this. I can't tell you what it will look like. I can say what I think it should involve. It should have a recreational development, right? It should be something that the people of Tarrytown and visitors continue to enjoy well into the future. Whatever happens in that area, it should mitigate flooding. A lot of the things that we did see were the kinds of plants, the kinds of structural arrangements with burns to enable the water from not encroaching onto the village itself. I do think it is possible to visualize a way to transform that space so that people 100 years from now will have the kinds of beautiful sort of experience that they have there now, but it will take an immense amount of research and care and dedication and a real serious belief that climate change is real and it's something that has to be mitigated.
Mr. Kim, same question.
I'd like to build on what Effie said. The waterfront, as we know, we don't know what it's going to be. I think one thing that we did realize from the Climate Adaptive Design Studio was that much of the area that will see flooding, see a lot of damage over time, are the areas that were filled in. And if you look at a map back from the early or late 1800s, is that actually the parts that were filled in is that's where the water is going. Actually, that's where the water will be in another 80 to 100 years. So I think the question has to. I think what we need to make sure is that we're not that when we look at all the different issues, that obviously part of the reason why we've partnered with Climate Adaptive Design Studio is because of their ability to engage the citizens in this whole process as well. And we don't want to, and at the same time, we don't want to expend a lot of village resources in places where it's going to receive a lot of damage over time. And so I think we need to be judicious and pragmatic about it and not try to fight nature, because we can't hold back the water as we, we just can't. There's some things that we're not going to win. So
Thank you. Mr. Bartolacci?
In terms of my vision, it's pretty simple. I'd like to see a refurbished marina. We have a pretty large marina there now, and it would be great to have that up and running again. And I'd like to see pickleball courts. Of course, that's a simplistic answer to a much more complicated issue, which is what is the water going to look like 30 years from now? But I think no matter what we do, and I don't pretend to know the answers. I really don't. And I attended some of the Cornell study presentations, and it all looked great and everything. But I don't pretend to have the answers on that. But what I will say is it should continue to be the resident and public resource that it is now. And in any way possible, it should be expanded so that, it gets even better. The park down there is lovely. It's a place to go and just enjoy the incredible view of the bridge. And, we can get more people down there. I'd like to see better access, to be honest. The H Bridge is not adequate, and it will only get worse if there's any more development down that way. So I would say marina, pickleball courts, a new H Bridge, or some better way to get over to the waterfront, and making sure that anything that's done is climate adaptive.
Okay, Mr. Callanan.
Thank you. I take exception in a funny sense with what David had said about you can't fight nature. And David, just let you know, every day I walk out on the ball fields coaching kids, and I'm wearing sunscreen. So I'm fighting nature every step of the way as much as possible in that regard. But on a more serious note, I think an issue as significant as this, I think it really requires sort of a short-term approach, short-term solution, as well as a long one. The Climate Design Studios, I'm not sure if they're the best resource for designing our future in that regard. I think, it's part of Cornell University, I understand, and it's a profit-motivated organization or group. So I think we could rely more heavily on governmental institutions in certain cases, like the Army Corps of Engineers, to give us, a better idea of what needs to be done, again, short and long term. And I would talk to other areas that are, similarly affected. I would talk to municipalities like New Orleans, for example, which is constantly dealing with issues of flooding and sea rising, the effects of sea rising. Countries like Holland, okay, is another example. I think there's so many different resources out there that aren't necessarily profit motivated that could provide a lot of answers, a lot of guidance on this, again, both short and long term. For now, I would keep things, I wouldn't overdevelop, of course. I think the idea of more recreation, ball fields, is one of my favorite areas. I think would be really critical as well. I've never played pickleball, but I'm sure they'd be fitting down there really well as well. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy.
Thank you. To add on to what John said, I think that it's a situation that would require a lot of study and long-term study from a wide range and a wide group of professionals that would be able to help us to find a solution that would be the most both financially advantageous and be able to allow us to see really progressive and really substantial development and substantial changes so that all of us have an area that we're able to. Let me start over. My point is what I'm trying to say is that I would leave it to professionals. I don't have answers to that. I would leave it to people that we could entrust that would be able to give us both short-term and long-term solutions. But most importantly, what I would do is I would also make sure to include the residents, the people that are going to be enjoying it and using it every single day, the people that live with it, the people that love that area. What do they want to see? What do they not want to see? I think that the residents have to have a very large voice in addition to the experts as to what they would like long-term in their community and in that area that so many of us get to use on a daily basis and love, and how can we make that better for everybody to be able to enjoy? Thank you.
Ms. McGovern?
Hi, the waterfront, you got to kind of look at it in two ways. You have short-term, long-term. Short-term, the concern would be for me, I would not encourage a lot of development down there. I would not say yes to a hotel. I would not say, I just wouldn't say yes to any development down there. As far as the marinas go, I love the marinas. The issue short-term is the dredging. Dredging has not happened because dredging is very expensive. But the village is pursuing many, many ways through grants and any kind of help we can get in this area. We've solicited with our other legislators. Something will happen there, but for now, it's very expensive and very difficult for the village to make that a top priority. Long term, we have to listen to what's going on with the climate. We have to take the time to look at it. I mean, what I was excited about was in this climate action study, they not only talked about what will happen, but they gave us these wonderful choices of how to do these walkways through what will become marshland. I agree with everybody. Professional people are the ones to do the long term. I would like to announce that we do have 4 pickleball courts already down at the recreation center. So Peter, you can play now down by the river. We are also adding 4 pickleball courts over at Lagana Field, so we'll have plenty of pickleball in the near future.
May I take a rebuttal, please?
You'd like to, I'm sorry?
Yes,
You'd like
I
to
would like to
rebut?
make, yes.
Sure, go ahead. 30
Yeah,
seconds.
I'd like to take my 30 seconds to defend my alma mater, Cornell University. Yes, it's very expensive to go there, but it's a research institution and it's a teaching institution, and they're doing a lot of good around the state, especially with all of their Cornell extensions, and they're helping a lot of communities. And this program was geared towards helping communities envision something better for the future. So that's what it's all about. Thank you.
We're going to move to the question number 5. Do you think that the percentage of affordable housing required of all developments is sufficient? And do you see opportunities to create more affordable housing in Tarrytown? And we're going to begin with you, Mr. Kim.
The 10% that we have, by legislation, is geared towards 60% AMI, which is at the low end of the scale. And I think as Mayor Brown has mentioned, what we're missing is the part that's in the middle. People, if you build a building that has many units that are at the low end of the scale in terms of rent, they have to make it up with units that are very expensive. So you get kind of a very expensive units and very inexpensive units. What we're missing is those people that are accessible for those that are in between, the workforce housing, basically 80 to 120% of area median income. And so I think that our rules, all the zoning rules that we have, and this applies to all across America, and it's very common knowledge that our rules actually inhibit flexibility and choice. And what we have is single family homes, and then we have big gigantic buildings, because those are the only ones who are able to have enough deep in our pockets to go through the onerous entitlement processes. So I'm for
Okay.
making it more flexible and have more choice.
Thank you. Mr. Bartolacci, you're next.
So I'll take a shot at actually answering the question. Yes, my answer is yes. I believe the 10% is appropriate and adequate. I think the issue we have is a county or a state issue. It's not a Tarrytown issue. Tarrytown, as was noted earlier, about once the YMCA development comes online, we will be at 10% affordable housing in Tarrytown. That's good. The problem we have is that only Tuckahoe as a village has more affordable housing, and every other village in Westchester County is nowhere near that. And so it's a question of, should other villages should Tarrytown be the one trying to solve this problem, or should the county be pushing other villages to build more affordable housing? I just don't think it's Tarrytown's problem to solve. And you either have single family houses or huge buildings. I mean, Tarrytown is not that. Tarrytown has single family houses, and then it has a ton of multifamily houses, and it also has medium to small apartment buildings. So, I think Tarrytown is a good mix like that. But again, I'm just saying, I think the 10% is reasonable and should be kept at that.
That's time. Mr. Callanan.
Thank you. I do believe that the current rate is sufficient. For members of the board, the current board, and the mayor to voice concern over what they're calling the people in the middle, that's a lot of us. That's most of us. And if affordability is the concern, I switched from Constellation Energy back to Con Ed. I had no idea I was being forced into Constellation Energy by the current board, by the mayor. I just switched back in July, and I saw a dramatic change in my power bill. Okay, I'm saving about $400 a month, $500 a month, based just on switching back from Constellation Energy, which is what, again, the board and the mayor apparently forced us into. So if you want to start talking about the people in the middle like us, if you want to talk about affordability, start there, okay? Because a lot of it's the brutal lack of transparency on the part of the board and the mayor, where they got us into this, and they're not really letting us out. They're not telling us about this. I want to announce to everybody who isn't aware, you should look at your energy bill. And if you're not on Con Ed, you're probably spending way more money than you should be, thanks to the current board and the mayor. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy?
In regards to affordable housing, I think that we have a very good mix of different types of affordable housing. And I think that if we wanted to focus on maintaining or establishing more of it, part of what we should have done was the current board should have kept a better eye on One River Plaza or Asbury Terrace in regards to the sale of that building. That building is an affordable housing building that I grew up in, as a matter of fact, and it was sold for $16 million. $9 million of that is now being used or earmarked towards the project that's being completed over at the YMCA. So they basically sold an affordable housing building, or they allowed the sale of an affordable housing building right from underneath the feet of the residents to build another one. They robbed Peter to pay Paul. And there's a lot of instability for those residents currently. And I speak for a lot of them because they're my former neighbors, and I feel like a sense of, I feel indebted to represent them and to speak for them, because they feel like they were not taken into account. And they are part of the residents and the constituents that we're speaking about right now in regards to having an affordable housing apartment that now is going to have the rates increased exponentially. They don't know if they're going to be able to stay there. They don't know if they're going to be able to continue to live there. And
That's fine.
Thank you.
Ms. McGovern? You need to turn on your microphone.
I did that, sorry. First, I'd just like to clarify that the village had nothing to do with the Asbury Terrace sale, nor did we have anything to do with the money. It was not given to the village. We have no control over where it was dispersed. So I just need to clear that one thing up. As far as affordable housing goes in Tarrytown, the 10%, I'm not sure if the 10% that's being asked in this question is regarded to, we require every developer to put 10% worth of his unit account into affordable housing for Tarrytown. So that's one part of 10%. And honestly, I think we should be doing more. We should be making maybe 12 to 15% of whatever's built in Tarrytown has to be dedicated to affordable housing. The second thing is, as far as the whole entire county goes, I mean, Tarrytown is up there with Tuckahoe. We have done our part. That doesn't mean we should stop. I have to say that it also is, it's an issue that goes beyond Tarrytown's borders. It is something that the county as well as the state needs to deal with. But I would never turn my back on an idea of another affordable housing project in Tarrytown.
And Ms. Phillips-Staley?
May I provide a rebuttal?
I'm sorry?
May I give a rebuttal, please?
Sure. 30 seconds.
Thank you. To clarify, I'm not saying that the board sold River Plaza or Asbury Terrace, but I do know that the Affordable Housing Committee had members on it that dealt with that sale. And I know that there are village board members that are on that committee and on many committees and could have done something to have prevented it, or could have done something to notify its residents in order to make them aware of that sale. Thank you.
Can I also give a rebuttal?
And me.
1 second.
No, and I'm not rebutting Becky. I'm actually just want to touch on something that Karen Brown had said. She wants to increase the tax base. Well, you can build affordable housing, or you can build valuable properties that will actually increase the tax base. Again, we're at 10% throughout the village, and we have a requirement for 10% for any new development. The question was, is this adequate? I believe it is adequate, and I think it's time for the rest of the county to start pulling their weight.
I just don't want to lose sight of my response.
No. I'm coming back to you. Would you like me to read the question again, or you've got it?
Yeah, you know what? Read it again. Let's
Okay.
do it.
I'm sorry, you do or don't?
Please, just if you could read it one more time.
Sure. Do you think that the percentage of affordable housing required of all developments is sufficient? And do you see opportunities to create more affordable housing in Tarrytown?
Thank you for the question. I think what's critical here is not just looking at a percentage and checking it off and saying, is that okay? It's actually looking at the need of people who live within the village. And so I'm going to go back to, the kinds of things that I've heard my children say about their friends having to leave school, right? They have to leave because the rent is too expensive. They can't stay where they were born. They can't stay where they grew up. There isn't sufficient affordable housing to keep people who are from Tarrytown in Tarrytown. It is not a surprise to me that we have more and more food pantries opening if people have to use a higher percentage of their income to pay their rent. What are you going to choose? Something to eat or having a roof over your head? This is the situation we're in now. I think it is, I will say for myself, the metric of 10% is not something that I'm comfortable with. It's not enough, because if we stay with that, that means people actually suffer. And as elected officials, we really have to pay attention to the well-being of the residents within this village. I would certainly push for 20%, but going back to David's point, it is really careful, smart development that takes care of, frankly, the majority of Americans who are in this position right now, who are struggling with the heightened cost of living, and they don't qualify for the 10% of housing that is already being mandated.
Okay, that's time. We are now hitting the last question.
For rebuttal.
You want to rebut? Okay.
Sorry, Maura. So just to put things in perspective, my understanding is that whereas in Tarrytown, roughly 10% of the housing in Tarrytown is affordable, our neighboring Rivertowns hover around 1%. So as we have 10% affordable housing, our neighbors are only 1%. So part of what I think what Peter is saying is they could probably do more with that. And in addition, if Ms. Phillips-Staley, if you wanted to then, guarantee 10% or increase 10% in order to help keep current residents here, would you be willing then to limit affordable housing in Tarrytown to current residents or versus outsiders? Thank you.
That is time. Is there another rebuttal before we go to the last question?
One more rebuttal. And it has to
It's
do.
30 seconds.
I'm going to be so quick. It has to do with our Con Ed bill. I just want to say that program has been around just for 1 year. It is multiple mailings go to people's, and I will say this, it is important that people use their choice of opting out if that is something they choose. There are multiple mailings, multiple announcements, and I look at my bill, I actually compare my Con Edison bill to see what the difference in the rate is. I personally make the choice to keep it because it helps advance, smart energy, so sustainable energy. And I'm willing to do that. For those who aren't, I understand. Call us, we'll tell you how to opt out.
That's time. We are now going to go to the last question for the evening. Effective governance depends on the ability to communicate and hear from all residents. What is the village getting right in its communications approach, and what would you change? And for this question, we start with Mr. Bartolacci.
That is a great question, and I would love to answer it. What is the village getting right? Well, up until a little while ago, I would probably answer that not a lot. I have seen improvement, so give credit where credit's due. There is an attempt because I think they finally realized that when you have important issues that are going to affect everyone in town, you actually need to hear from the people. Whether they attend the meeting or not is unimportant. You need to figure out a way to hear from them. Dispensaries are a good example. This ADU situation, those are just two examples. So I do see an effort and I encourage more of it, but for a very long while, it just wasn't working. In terms of what needs to improve, we absolutely have to figure out a way to allow residents to speak at meetings. Right now, you have 3 minutes to speak and you get cut off, whereas a cheerleader, for whatever cause the current board thinks is the flavor of the day and something we need to do, they literally get unlimited time. That is completely unfair. It does not lead to good decisions, and we need to figure out a way to change that. Back a few years ago, you pretty much got unlimited time if you were making sense and the mayor thought it was a good idea.
And that is time.
3 minutes.
That is your time. Mr. Callanan.
I'm largely here because of the lack of transparency. And so whatever the current board and mayor have done to convey information, to let people know about ADUs, to let people know about the energy issue, it's not working. So I would implore maybe David, if you want to touch base with your alma mater, Cornell, and I could touch base with my alma mater, Lemoyne College, there's got to be a better way. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but whatever you guys have done up to this point, and gals, of course, it's not working. So look, we can do better, okay? And we must do better. We're on the cusp of possibly some major changes to the infrastructure of the town, the population size, the population density. The decisions that need to be made, that will be made, whether it's the waterfront or elsewhere, needs to be clear, needs to be more transparent and more consistently and effectively conveyed to the people. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy?
I think part of what they have gotten right has come as a result of the ADUs. I think that because there was such an outcry that the lack of transparency and the lack of notification about an issue as important as that, they have taken some steps in order to improve their methods of communicating with residents. And so I commend that step in the right direction. What I do think needs to be worked on is the inclusivity in all of residents, whether you agree or not, whether they are dissenters or those in favor, being able to have their voices heard, being able to be represented, being able to have an active role and participation to how their town should represent them. Because at the end of the day, the Board of Trustees and the mayor are there and are elected to represent all of Tarrytown, not just the individuals that agree with them. The 3 minutes as well, the time limit, I think is a bit biased, and that could be worked on as well. And I think that allowing residents to be notified properly and in much more effective ways of important issues is really at the forefront of how we can move forward as a town and as a village. Thank you.
Ms. McGovern?
Aye. Okay, so yes, we've learned lessons and yes, we've changed things. I do have to say though, regarding the ADU situation, every single time we had a public hearing, we went back to our desks and we rewrote that law to include whatever was said. 3 times we did that. So that is responsive government. I'm sorry. Whenever we do our budget, we put it online. We have seminars at the library. We have 2 public hearings at the village hall. We put the effort out there. Tarrytown has 11,000 residents in it. We can't reach every single person. We do it the best way we know how. We send postcards. We have a newsletter. So I just feel like, well, yes, maybe things can get better, but we have not been remiss in doing what is due diligence now. 3 minutes may not seem like a lot, but it will be a lot when you have 50 people talking to you. We need to get business done at these meetings as well. So in my opinion, when we get to a point where we have a lot of talking going on about an issue, which is what I wanted to do with the ADUs, my opinion, we continue a hearing until every single person gets heard. But we still have to get business done. We also have a huge amount of citizen committees that people could always join and are welcome to do so. Just visit our portal for volunteerism.
Ms. Phillips-Staley, your turn.
Can I do a rebuttal to that if I could?
Let me see. This will be your last rebuttal.
Okay.
Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Sorry, Becky, I don't mean to pick on you. But I just want to say, you wouldn't have 50 people at a meeting who want to speak if what you were proposing wasn't incredibly controversial and not wanted by many, many, many people in this village. The other thing I'll say is, yeah, there's lots of committees, but the one committee that really mattered, which was the HATF that came up with the ADU proposal, sat in a room for 2 years and wouldn't actually allow the public in. The public asked to be involved, and this board said no. So they locked themselves in a room, and then they came out with this proposal that was hugely controversial. And then everyone showed up at the meeting, and you were surprised. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Could I rebut as well?
You have one. This would be your last rebuttal.
You got it.
30 seconds.
For the record, with regard to volunteerism and opportunities afforded to us by the residents, by the town, I've been volunteering for 40 something years. Okay. And I specifically volunteered to become a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force. I filled out the paperwork. It was all online, submitted what needed to be submitted to you, to the board, to the town. And I got no response. So you can kind of make the offer, hey, folks, we want your input, want you to help out. When I offered my service, I offered my time to volunteer.
And
nothing came.
that is time.
Thank you.
Ready? Okay, Ms. Phillips-Staley, it is now your turn.
Repeat the question, please. I just want to.
Yeah, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Effective governance depends on the ability to communicate and hear from all residents. What is the village getting right in its communications approach, and what would you change?
Thank you. I mean, what the village is getting right, I would say right now, and I will agree, this is something that we have been diligent about improving even before the situation with the ADUs. We formed an internal committee to really assess how our communication is working and how it can be better. I will not disagree with the fact that before I understood what the type of communication options were available, it was hard for me before I was elected to even follow things. So I get that fully. We have a newsletter that goes out once a week that talks about upcoming legislation, that talks about events, it talks about everything in the village recycling. It has 4,300 subscribers. It has a 61% open rate, which is really staggering. And about the 4,300 subscribers, I think there are 3,800 households in Tarrytown. So frankly, from a communications perspective, I think that's significant. And I think that that actually works pretty well. I'm proud of the village in that respect. I do want to speak a little bit more just about the ADUs and to say that the kinds of communication we received was not just what you saw when people came to hear, and frankly, encourage it. I wish there were tons of people at every one of our meetings. We received an immense amount of support for that too. An immense.
That is time. Mr.
May I
Kim?
provide a rebuttal?
Ah, there we go. Is it, I'm sorry, I couldn't see who that was.
Haydee McCarthy.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that in regards to communication, there's been no public symposiums. There's been no symposiums at all. There's been certain aspects of there's been certain aspects that have been, followed to the T, like ADUs from, these like grand gestures and ideas that they keep reverting back, the board keeps reverting back to and keeps, wanting to access and use. And
That
then
is-
something as simple as public symposiums where people get to speak.
I'm sorry,
are
that's
not-
time.
Thank you.
Mr. Kim,
Um,
shall I read the question? Let me read
yes,
the question.
please.
Effective governance depends upon the ability to communicate and hear from all residents. What is the village getting right in its communications approach, and what would you change?
Thank you. I think, for instance, in the recent past, we were following the protocols and the procedures of whatever is in the statute, basically how it's always been done in the past. And obviously, those kind of notices weren't enough to alert people to the issues, because it's, people don't pay attention, and it's easy to not pay attention. And so I think as the other members of this, the forum has mentioned that, yes, we did make adjustments to make it more prevalent, make notices more prevalent. And I think that's an improvement, but is that enough? Probably not, because I think the forum that we have is not adequate for what many of us desire, is a conversation. And so, and I think that we can look for opportunities or forum to have conversations about issues, rather than just, grandstanding or coming to a soapbox for 3 minutes, which is not adequate. And so I think that is the issue.
That is time. That concludes the question and answer portion of this evening. We will turn to closing statements. You will each have 1 minute. And as I said before, I'm reversing the order of the opening statements. So, Mr. Bartolacci, you are first.
Okay. I'll just go back to what I started out with, which was our positions match the views of our members. And in our case, it would be our positions will match the views of our constituents and our residents, not just those people that agree with us. If you're looking for open and honest government, an inclusive government, good listeners with new ways of thinking, and new ways of approaching things and critically analyzing things, I would encourage you to consider my ticket for my ticket of Haydee, John, and Doug Zollo for your vote. I will go back to a Hudson Independent article where Mayor Brown listed one of her accomplishments, and there weren't many accomplishments, but one of the biggest accomplishments she listed was that she had provided new windows for the Elizabeth Masha Daycare Center. She's been mayor for 2 years, and if that's the best that she can come up with, I ask you, could we possibly not achieve that or exceed that? Thank you.
That is time. And now we go to Mr. Kim.
Okay, thank you. You have heard from us, the candidates, on many of the issues facing our village. Our slate, current Mayor Karen Brown, current trustees Becky McGovern, Effie Phillips-Staley, and I have been working together for the last 2 years, bringing to the board deliberations diverse skill sets and perspectives to push our village forward in addressing the myriad of today's challenges with a long view of the future. At times, we have divergent viewpoints, yet we proceed with civility and respect as a team and neighbors with the same objective and goal to meet the concerns and needs of today's residents and for those to come. We have accomplished much in many areas of municipal governance, but our work is ongoing, in many instances just beginning. We want to keep going with your faith and trust in moving our community forward. Whether you cast your ballot as an absentee or early voting, we ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Vote row A all the way. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips-Staley.
Well, I'd like to first thank the League of Women Voters for hosting these forums and all of the work that you do to encourage voting and civic participation. Of course, I'd like to thank all the residents who have tuned in and put the questions forward. Your questions mean a lot to us, and they were important for us to discuss and to think about. I'm grateful to be on the slate that I am on under the leadership of Mayor Karen Brown, with Becky McGovern, with David Kim, and all of the skills that they bring. I think one of the wonderful things about this particular slate is how well we work together, and frankly, how much we care about the citizens of this village. We would never, I certainly would never have run for office if it wasn't for the purpose of serving. I'm proud of our accomplishments within communications, within safety, and frankly, I'm proud of the kinds of relationships that we have across the village with the police, with the fire department, though that can be contentious. They matter to all of us. We support them, and we support all of you for your time.
Ms. McGovern.
Get this memo. Hi. Yeah, it's been a great night. It's been a fun opportunity for all of us to participate in listening to other people's ideas, because whether you're for or against something, the fleshing out of ideas makes us all think, and I think it's a good thing. I appreciate so much this forum and all that the League of Women Voters has done for providing this opportunity. I would like to encourage those of you listening tonight to consider our slate. I think we've worked very hard, very progressively, and have provided greatly for this village, and I think we will continue to do so. I appreciate all the support I have had in the past 16 years, and I ask that you allow me to continue. Thank you.
Ms. McCarthy.
Just wanted to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, especially someone that's a novice like myself that has done a little bit of stuttering over her own words this evening. So I appreciate allowing me the opportunity to speak. And also to the residents that have posed questions. I would like to offer the residents an opportunity to have a slate of candidates that are willing to listen, that are respectful of the police and fire, firefighters in our village, that are volunteer, that are the lifeblood of our community, and that have had recently such a contentious relationship with Mayor Karen Brown and with the trustees. There's been a lot of distrust, there's been a lot of disrespect, and I think that there has been a lot of lack of appreciation for the residents that make this village what it is. and the fact that a lot of people need to work very hard in order to maintain the ability to live here. We would like the opportunity to represent you, to represent all of you, whether we agree or we don't. And we thank you very much for the time and hope that we have your support.
Thank you. Mr. Callanan? Nope, we got to put on your mic and then you can close us out.
Sorry about that. What a way to end. I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting, and of course, Sarah, I'm sorry, Susan, Maura, Carrie, and Lynn for all your help. The candidates on both sides of the spectrum, really appreciate you guys taking the time, and of course, the viewers and the residents of Tarrytown. We live in a Republican democracy, and with that, it's sort of baked into the system, of course, and it's in our founding documents. It's all about government buying for the people, and we want to bring that back, really, for by the residents of Tarrytown, citizens and non-citizens, as well as for the residents of Tarrytown. That's come undone recently, and we'll bring it back. So I'm proud of our ticket. I think we got a great crew, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, and we hope and pray that we'll have your support. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you candidates for participating in this, and to the audience for listening. I want to remind you that this forum was recorded, not pre-recorded. It was recorded, and it will be available for later viewing on YouTube on the channel LWV Rivertowns. You can also go to the Rivertowns League website and Facebook page for a link to the location. I'm going to remind you that early voting for this election begins October 28th. Election day is November 7th. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. We encourage everyone to vote. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening. The forum is now over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.